Matt Casner is an award-winning freelance designer. He's a business coach, and he speaks an awful lot. So you might catch him out on, at someone else's event, talking really about a little bit more about the rigor of freelance. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down. If they think freelance is, oh, just this easy breezy, oh, I can just go into it, or creatives go into it and then they find out there's a lot more to business about it. And so Matt really fits that really amazing niche. And so he's looking for people who have really specific gifts and talents, and they want to launch and they want to build a successful business around that. And he has spent almost 2 decades really honing in on systems that can help, people do that. And he shares those resources. And I'll let him talk a little bit at the end of the course and kind of offerings that he has, just as a big thank you for coming to AAF today and really giving his knowledge. But he has some actual downloadables and some strategies to share. So at the end, of course, we'll ask him for those resources. And certainly if you have questions, reach out to him. Find him on LinkedIn, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's Matt with 1 T. So if you're looking for him, I've made that mistake before. Matt, M-A-T, Casner, C-A-S-N-E-R. So welcome to the AAF Heartland Lunch and Learn, Matt.
Hey, Priscilla, thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation, and I just love the opportunity to be here today. Thank you very much. I have been freelancing now full time for more than 15 years. I started in the KC market, working through a variety of agencies and corporate marketing departments. And then about 15 years ago, I was working remotely as a kind of a test telecommuting situation. And the bug bit me so hard. And that's kind of where I got inspired to get started. For me, it was a journey of learning. I'm not a classically trained business person, not a classically trained accountant or marketer. Even though I have served most of my career in the marketing industry, I've been on the more creative, the production side. And so starting out as a freelancer for me was kind of going back to school some ways to really figure the business side out of freelancing. Yeah. I feel like I've done that a little bit, not to brag, but I have clients now, the lifetime value that approaching the $1.5 million mark, which just validates that freelancing is a potential for people that are considering it. And what I do now through my coaching, Freelance On Fire, is just help others, creatives, professionals that want to be independent, showing them some of the business things that I've learned over the past 15 years.
That's awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We want to have you give us the state of freelance right now, because I know there's just so much, change going on, and nobody needs any more trauma this year. My new phrase is, whatever it is, if something's wrong, I'm just going to say, look, because 2020. So I'm just leaving that. But before we get into that specifically, can you just tell us what your original connection with AAF was, and how you connected to Pitt State, like how you've been helping other students and where that originated?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pitt State's Graphic and Imaging Technology School, that's my alma mater. Graduated there in '96. That was last century. And since then, I have been closely tied to the department for the last, probably the last 15 years. I've been very tied into their internship program. I've had a lot of Pitt State students who have actually come in and worked with me. In fact, working with those students one-on-one and kind of having that mentoring relationship over a summer was kind of the genesis for Freelance On Fire and kind of creating that environment for learning. But I'm now president of the advisory board for the Graphics and Imaging Technology Department. So we meet and consult with the faculty and staff. And for the last several years, I have been a part of their company day, which is a expo of industry that comes to the school, businesses and organizations, and they represent themselves. Little Bird Marketing and other agencies will come and present themselves so students can get an idea of what industry looks like, opportunities that are out there, and people that they can start networking with. And it was through those events at Pittsburgh State I met Priscilla, and have enjoyed being a part of the AAF Heartland family.
Yeah. So tell me, what do you think is the biggest myth about freelance? What is the biggest maybe mistake or pitfall that kind of happens to people right at the beginning?
You know, some people that are in the freelance world like I am don't like the word freelance, because I think that in a lot of ways the word connotates hobby, or part-time, or just doing it because I want some extra income. I think some of those people would prefer to be called consultants, small business owners. I've kind of wore the freelance moniker fairly proudly. I live in a town of 650 people, just practically, Mound City. And so when I started my business, I thought, what a great experiment to see if I could do this full time. So I would say that maybe that would be maybe a struggle, was just maybe just from a positioning standpoint, because the name doesn't always connotate, I don't know, legitimate.
Yeah, it's like newly emerged, this whole idea of the legitimacy of the side hustle, but you're right in that it's not a side hustle. This is, you know, and we kind of have now these new, you know, phrases like with a gig economy and all these other kinds of things, but you're right, they don't actually connote this solid expertise, and it is up to freelancers then who are like in your shoes, who are, you know, really small business owners or medium-sized business owners, really, and how you're actually growing clientele and really putting processes in. So we have a couple of questions about the process and everything, but first, I just want to let you really blow off whatever steam you have about the state of freelance. So what is it you share with us today?
Well, you mentioned it earlier. 2020 has been a roller coaster ride. And, you know, for me, it's been heart-wrenching, punch in the gut sometimes, feels like. And I have observed since March, just watching this evolution in the marketplace, especially with staffing. You know, within 2 months, everybody's virtually working out of their house unless you were essential services. And that created all kinds of instability. To me, I would hate to be an HR person right now, trying to manage an entire workforce that's remote would not be my job that I'd want right now. And I have, you know, several individuals that are freelance coaching clients of mine. One of them is a young lady who's assistant professor, taught fine arts in Colorado, and lost her job, was displaced because of COVID, and found herself without a teaching position. And, you know, when I found her, she and several others like her that I've talked to that are now either working out of their house, and that either has one of two results. Either they're thrilled to death to be working at their house, or they can't stand it. So, I mean, you've got both sides of that, but then you've also got the other side, people that have been displaced. Companies have gone through these downsizings because of COVID, which has created for just a lot of stress, a lot of challenges just for people in their personal lives. Let's not throw in homeschooling and everything else that has seemed to just pile one thing on top of another. And
Absolutely.
I think if we can make it through 2020, we have proved something to ourselves.
Right.
Is that we are tough sons of a gun.
Yeah, who's going to be the last standing if you made it through 2020?
I tell people all the time, if all you can do right now is tread water.
Yeah.
Keep your head above water. And right now, you know, this is just me personally. Mindset is the biggest thing right now.
Yeah.
For people.
Okay, tell me how so. So you say that, and I totally agree with you, but you have more experience in the freelance. So when you say mindset is really where it's at right now, because it is a difficult time, but difficult times come around for businesses all the time. So in your experience with freelance, what is the mindset that really is key? What has helped you?
Well, pre-COVID, two of the biggest obstacles of a freelancer was self-doubt and imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, that is just, as a freelancer who is independent, those are things that are always in the back of a person's mind.
Right.
Throw them into a pandemic situation and it intensifies.
Mm.
And so most of the time what I do is just reinforcing the fact that, listen, the economy's bad right now.
Mm.
It's bad. It's not your fault. The fact is that everybody is struggling to some degree right now. So give yourself some grace. I say that all the time. And then I'm always reminding people of what their value is. What are you good at? What are the skills that you bring to a client, to an agency, that have real value, and own it. Don't dismiss it and think that your value has somehow just magically disappeared because we're in a tough time.
Right.
Don't ignore that. We are. Call a spade a spade. We're in a rough patch right now. Like I said, if we can get to the end of 2020, I'm doing handsprings. I'm like,
yeah, I do remember my accountant said right at the beginning of it, my first conversation was like, look, Priscilla, just assume you're going to lose 20%, even though you're amazing, and he's just like, it doesn't matter, whoever's out there, that's the very least of what's going to happen here, and I think that was good advice. But let me ask you about something that you and I have talked about quite a bit over the years that we've known each other, and that is about the interesting revolving door of companies bringing creatives in-house and then looking for outsourced. And so where freelancers fit into that puzzle. And I know you have pretty strong feelings about that cycle and what is going to be happening. So from your point of view, what is happening? What is the trend?
So I'm speaking right now pretty much out of my gut. But what has been happening to me, and I'm talking to a lot of people who live and work in the Kansas City, Johnson County area. And there are literally huge buildings downtown Overland Park that are incredibly vacant. And like I said, I would not want to be an HR person in today's economy right now. The way that, this is just my gut, this is what I feel like is the advantage for the agency and for the freelancer, is that I believe that a lot of these companies that have maintained internal departments for a long time or do not have an internal department could now leverage, because this whole concept of working remotely is now on everyone's radar. Now we're not going into a conference room to have a meeting with our coworkers. We're doing it over Zoom. And it doesn't matter if you live in the vicinity, you can hire someone who is miles away. So for an agency who is focused and honed in on getting specific results for a client, and a freelancer is a lot the same way, but in a niche sort of a capacity, has the ability to make themselves available. And I think this time will prove me either right or wrong, that companies now, from a hiring standpoint, will start looking at less from a holistic hiring standpoint and more from a laser focus. How can we spend money on this project to get this outcome and pull together the right team that can execute, get in and take care of it, versus trying to keep the ship afloat with all the overhead, which right now, I think all these guys sitting in there with your accountants are going, you know how much money we're saving in electric by not having the building open? You know how much we're saving in toilet paper by not having the building open? And I can't say that there's going to be this huge reshuffle, but I think those of us in agencies, those of us that have specific niches and can serve people with agility and excellence are in perfect positions. I'm telling my coaching students, Who's the company that you dream about working for?
Mm.
Send a message to the manager of the department and the HR director and say, listen, here's who I am. HR directors right now are trying to sift who's productive and who's not productive in their workforce.
Yeah.
There's some people that productivity's gone up. I've seen studies that because people are working from home, productivity's gone up, but I guarantee you there's the shift the other way as well.
Right, right. But
And I think that,
yeah,
go
let me
ahead.
talk a little bit on this one. You brought this one issue, and I think you walk right by it because you're so aware of it. But you hit on this about knowing your specific niche, your specialty. So, for example, I think in this market, you would agree, it's not a time to just go, oh, I could just replace whatever. So you really push your coaching students to look at their specialty and really hone in on what do you want to be famous for, and what is really your strength. And so what is the advice you're giving them about how they kind of own that agency of themselves, and how do they actually communicate if they look at that wish list of the companies they want to work with, but really there is specific kind of work they want to do. So how do you suggest they handle getting that specialty really in order?
Yeah, so I mean, this is something I hammer home with my students a ton. Is I really don't care about your portfolio. I just want to know the problems you can solve.
Mm.
At the end of the day, I mean, I'm going to expect quality to be there, and we should. I mean, that should be a non-negotiable. Where I tell my students to really position themselves, and you mentioned it, as an expert, a person who answers a specific question. You know, when my knee hurts, I don't go to my ear, nose, and throat doctor. I may go get a referral, but I'm going to find somebody that can fix and solve my problem. And if I'm Googling an orthopedic specialist or whatever, I want to see he's got a track record.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see that he's helped some people.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see some success stories, and
Right.
that's going to help lead me to find a solution for my problem, because I can put faith in the solution.
Right, right. Okay, I love that. I'm going to start with a question, though, that came in from a student that couldn't be here. And they were like, can you make sure that you ask Matt this question live? So specifically, it's connected to the niche kind of thing, or the specialty. So their question was, and I want to look at it, make sure I get it right. But if I'm just coming out of school, so just graduating, and I'm graduating into this kind of a mess of a situation, how much can I actually specialize? And are there trends that I should jump on? Are there specific things that companies are looking for more in freelance that I should maybe maximize the opportunity right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will tell you, as a college student, freelancing was not on my radar back in '96. And I can tell you that the time that I spent in agency work and corporate marketing, for me, was invaluable. Now, having said that, would I dismiss an opportunity to possibly jump in and do some freelance? I mean, I was doing it freelance full part-time as a college student, and even up until. But here's I think an opportunity. If you are a young college student, you're missing one big thing. That's experience. That's a deficit. That's a big negative in that category. It's not insurmountable, but with no track record, it's really hard to. You've got to just spend some time working and developing. Okay. However, this is something that has become very obvious to me since pandemic. Is I have witnessed all of these cottage industries, all of these home-based businesses getting started. Okay, these are people with legitimate business plans. They're small retailers that are now moving the whole pivot in COVID created this tidal wave of, I didn't have my business online. Now my business is online. Retail businesses in every town, even my small little town here in Mound City, I've watched retail businesses put their businesses online. And every one of those businesses needs an expert to talk to. Mm. And believe me, I know these guys that run these businesses. They're small mom and pop shops. who are looking for solutions and don't have huge, big budgets. But what they do present are opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I would do. If I was a new college student and I would pick what I wanted my focus to be, and then I would start hopping into chamber meetings. I'd start finding these little towns, wherever they're at, stop hopping into chamber meetings and start raising my hand and say, hey, I can help you with this.
Okay.
And it's a way for them to get some experience. There's no other way around it. They've got to get it somehow, whether they're in a 9-to-5, learning there and getting their chops down, or they're hacking away in a side hustle. Either way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me shift gears just a little bit, because this is another question that's coming in right now, and I'm going to try and read it and make sense of it. But so there's a huge push right now to customer centricity, right? All of the big brands, there's always talk. You can't really get on a webinar about where business is going without this kind of, it's the customer's always right times 100 of this. So in terms of freelance, and if you were either a one-person shop or a two-person shop, or you kind of come together as a collective, what kind of advice would you give about this move of client centricity? What's the kind of communication that you're going to need to prepare yourself for if you want to become a freelancer?
Mm-hmm. So I would say that a lot of my clients are medium-sized businesses. I have some very large clients, but those are few and far between. A lot of them are small to medium-sized businesses. And a lot of times I end up spending a lot of time coaching them, educating them. So the mindset, I feel like a freelancer who's going into some of this customer-centric environment is educate the customer, help them understand, because they're going to get their opinion from somewhere, mm-hmm. whether it's online, from a friend, or whatever. And so at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not going to fight with a customer unless there's good reason. But I feel like that there's value that we can bring, put the consultant hat on, and provide them with education, help them be better business owners. I'm coming here to help you solve a problem, and you understand it from your perspective. Let me add some background. Let me add some additional information that might make it a little bit more clear from you, and then help you see things from my perspective and why the solution that I'm offering you looks a little bit different, or the execution looks a little bit different. At the end of the day, they're the customer. But I think there's ways that we can kind of mitigate that whole, mindset for the client.
Mm-hmm. Just a little follow-up to that I'm a little bit curious about. What do you think the right balance is as a freelancer? How much time should you be spending working on your business, your plan, and marketing it, and being on profiles and sharpening, the people's view, or how many times they bump into you, versus actually doing the work? What's the selling doing dance? What is that?
Yeah, I can tell you that when I first started as a freelancer, I didn't know how to work on my business. I was still so new at the whole thing. All I was doing. The E-Myth was the first business book that I read by Michael Gerber. I was the producer. I was the technical guy. I didn't have the other two hats to wear. So I had to find my way through that. Now I can say, I would say probably 10% or more is spent on my internal business activities. Maybe even 20%. Now it seems like it may be more than that.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you outsource some other work? Like, do you outsource the invoicing, or outsource, do you coach your freelancers to get themselves work to that kind of a position so they can really focus on the work, or do you like that blend?
There are parts of being a freelancer I could leave behind. I'm not a bookkeeper. So how I have done that is I trade services with a bookkeeper, and provide them some support from a technical side, and they provide me bookkeeping services.
Okay.
I mean, I have an accountant. I do pay them because, and then I also have I have a VA that I offload kind of like the tasks that are kind of the bottom of my list, so that I'm not bogged down with all of the details. But I can tell you that that's only really happened within the last 5 years. So up until then, I was chief cook and bottle washer by necessity. I think once you get to a certain level, once you get to the point where your capacity is literally busting at the seams, is when you need to look at bringing some help in.
Okay, I like that. So let's talk a little bit about marketing. But one of the questions coming in is about profile, like where should I be so people could see me? Like where, barring, creating an entire website, are there other places that are smaller and getting started that you can be seen for the expertise or this niche or the specialty that you're talking about in order to, to get some, what I guess we would call really inbound interest?
Yeah. So I use a very simple analogy, and if you're from the Midwest, hopefully this isn't foreign, but it's fishing. And people understand that fishing is a sport that you must travel to a body of water to catch a fish. And not only that, but if you're looking for a special kind of fish, it's going to take maybe a little bit of nuance, like maybe knowing what time of day, maybe knowing what kind of lure to use, maybe understanding that there is maybe a technique that you need to use. So what I tell my clients and my coaching students is, first you need to know where your fish are. Who are your clients? Who are the people that you want to start relationships with? Find out where they are. So is it online? Is it in a Facebook group? Is it in a chamber, or is it in a professional organization? Where do these people live? Do they come together once a year at a trade show? Find out where these people live. Find out what their needs are. What are the common questions that you have the answers to? And I tell people to go find the fish. Go find those places where those people are congregating and start answering questions.
Yeah, I think that also answers the idea of like, it's not, then you're not going after one. You're putting your rod, your line in the water, saying there's a lot to choose from, and I don't have to like necessarily get this one. I could get any of these fish, and this could work for me.
Right.
I like that analogy. That's really cool, Matt. Okay, I have another question coming in here. So about COVID specifically for freelancers, what have you seen in terms of pricing, or how do they go about even getting started on how should I bid things out? How do I price things? What are some tips about how they get going? And have you seen changes specifically because of COVID?
Yeah, for freelancers, pricing is a bit of an enigma. People will start freelancing, and a lot of times people will back into an hourly rate based off whatever their 9 to 5 was paying them. I mean, they do some crude math in their head, and they say, I was making this, I'm going to add, 30%, then I'm going to create a rate, which honestly is not a bad place to start. You have to start somewhere. What I do when I'm normally coaching my people is I tell them to fill up your schedule. Price and promote what your services are. I do preach pretty heavily on value. We mentioned kind of in an earlier conversation with the whole Fiverr and Upwork market, which tends, in my mind, to devalue the freelance talent, where I use the term people kind of race to the bottom of the barrel as far as price goes to get a client. And I can tell you, as a freelancer who's done this for a long time, that when I go for the cheap work, those clients complain more, they're pickier, they're more demanding, they tend to ghost, they tend to change their mind. It's a nightmare.
I'm only laughing, Matt, because on the inside I'm crying.
Oh, well, I've had many good ugly cries with those types of people. I've fired many clients because of that. And that sounds, but it's true. The value is and then I kind of mentioned that whole self-doubt and imposter syndrome, that we devalue sometimes our worth as freelancers because we're individual.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, our worth and our value carries a price.
Right.
And if you can, again, find that sweet spot, and I tell people, you know, raising your price is not a bad thing once you're kind of booked out with work.
Mm-hmm.
That's once you are hitting a certain level of capacity, is a great time to start incrementally, you know, increasing your work as your demand bears it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of you know, I've lowered my prices sometimes in leaner seasons. I've tried to provide more value and try to create an environment where buying for the customer is easier.
Yeah. I love that idea you just shared. I like that idea of not lowering my prices, but maybe figuring out how can I add a little bit more value here in order to set you know, our team apart from someone else. I love that idea. I think that's super strong. Well, as we wind down here, a huge thank you to you for not only being a member here at AAF, but for giving us your expertise. But I want to really open this up and say, well, what did we not ask? What did I not ask that you think is super important about freelancing? And also, then I want to tee you up. Let's hear about Freelance on Fire. What is it you do? Who is ideal for you? And how can you help them?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. I would say maybe the last thing that I would share, and this would be for freelancers or agencies, is while right now where we're at feels really difficult, just to remember that life is made of seasons and that things rebound. And we just are hopefully going to be maybe have a new president soon. We'll see if we can get this done.
Right.
But in that case, you know, some of this is going to drift away, and we're going to be entering into Q1 in just a couple of months.
Yes.
And for us in our business, that is like,
Yeah.
And so we need to work hard. We need to be diligent. We need to be prepared. My formula for success is where preparedness meets opportunity. And if we are working hard and being diligent right now, then when things rebound, when the uptick comes, when that we will be prepared and we'll be ready to take advantage of the new opportunities that have been sitting there, but everybody's just kind of like, what do I do right now?
Right.
But it's going to come back, and it may be different. Maybe that's my second piece of advice: is let's adapt and overcome.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's your business name may not be the same next year that it was, but you know, to that point, you kind of mentioned it, but if we made it through, we have a business, and that's the thing to be celebrated, right? Okay, so please be completely selfish. What is Freelance on Fire, and how do people contact you? And you know, who do you help the most?
Yeah, so Freelance on Fire is a bit of a labor of love. I started it 4 years ago, and it has provided me with an opportunity to provide direct coaching and mentoring for creative professionals. My personal background is web and graphic design, but I have people in my coaching membership that are writers, social media marketers, programmers, photographers, and so I help them learn how to grow and scale their own businesses. I help them understand kind of the marketing side of being a business owner, how to maintain and how to run a successful freelance business. More than nuts and bolts, but also a lot of and I mentioned this earlier, coaching the mindset. How to come and win the day, how to set goals, and how to make daily progress. We underestimate what we can do in a couple of years, but we overestimate sometimes what we can do in a month. So I teach them and coach them. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Get buckled in. Freelanceonfire.com. I have a couple of free offers there. I have a roadmap that I've created that kind of shows you some of the essential pillars of being a successful freelancer. I have a lot of valuable blog posts that are there that you can consume. And coming in less than 30 days, I'm launching the Freelance on Fire podcast called Marketing for Freelancers.
Awesome. Okay, that's super exciting. That's something new that I didn't know. So as a podcast host, I'm excited. Join us. It's so fun out here. I totally love that. So as a club though, is there something we could do better for the people who you're teaching for the freelance? Like how, what is it that we miss about really integrating freelancers into our world as creatives?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the way that I look at freelancers. Freelancers are these free agents. And so in other words, in your agency, you have your players. Maybe one project requires a special skill set. Freelancers are a great opportunity to leverage an expertise that's not necessarily a long-term investment, but helps you get that win, helps you get that success that you want. And so here's my thing. Good freelancers are great team players. We work by ourselves, but our goal is to really serve and overproduce whatever we're doing and who we're working for. And so I can tell you that that's probably one of my favorite things of being a freelancer is the teams I get to work with. Mm-hmm. And so that's a benefit for me. So they're out there.
Yeah. Okay, I love that. Let's make sure that we reach out to the people at our club and really encourage this freelance idea and get us all connected. But one more time before we end, just tell people where they can reach you and that website where they have all those great freebies.
Yeah, www.freelanceonfire.com.
Awesome. Matt Casner with one T, M-A-T, Casner. Go find him on LinkedIn, connect with him. Are you a Twitter guy, Matt? I don't think we're connected on Twitter.
Yeah, my handle's Matt Casner with one T.
Oh, okay, it's easy. I'm sure we probably are connected. So make sure you connect with him. And if you have additional questions I didn't get to in this round, make sure you do that. We'll also post this recording on the AAF website. And certainly connect with anybody else. And we'll see you next time for our AAF Lunch and Learn. Matt, thank you so much.
Thanks, Priscilla. Glad to be here.